Drive about a half-hour north of Boston, and you'll find the city of Peabody, Massachusetts. It's a typical New England city of some 50,000 people. Many visitors probably drive right through Peabody without giving it a second glance on their way to the tourist haunts of nearby Salem. If they only knew that the lights that exist in this city through a nondescript doorway and up a set of stairs. Because Peabody, once famous as a major center in New England's leather tanning industry, is home to some other famous cities, at least famous to railway modelers. They're the cities found on the main line of the Franklin and South Manchester, an awe-inspiring HO scale layout, and the creation of fine-scale miniatures owner George Sellios. For many hobbyists the world over, a trip to see this layout is an important item on their bucket list.
I get a lot of visitors. Oh, do I get visitors? Well, the last open house I'm fellow was from New Zealand. I've had them from Australia, from South America, everywhere. I even had 3 guys from China. They didn't speak any English.
Regardless of where they come from, visitors to the Franklin and South Manchester look forward to seeing, in person, a layout that has been well covered in the hobby press. And one of the biggest draws is George's spectacular city scenery. If there's anything more impressive than the number of highly detailed structures on George's layout, it's realizing that no two are alike.
Every building is unique. I think that's the main thing in this layout. But still natural. You know, I got lots of detail on it, but I think it still looks natural. It's a little exaggerated. It's like a fantasy. I mean, all the buildings, they're like special. You know, if you looked at took the building off and just put it in place, it's not like the plain stuff you see all the time. Every building is unique.
George started building the Franklin and South Manchester in 1985, and almost overnight, it vaulted onto many modelers' lists of the world's best model railways of all time. It's easy to see why. George obviously has a strong vision and a style that has made the layout instantly recognizable on video or in print. Today, laser cutting and other modern manufacturing techniques make it much easier for a modeler to create a large city and populate it with details. But when the Franklin and South Manchester was introduced to the hobby world, such manufacturing aids were still years in the future, which only serves to make its many imposing structures and highly detailed scenes that much more impressive and inspiring. George's layout has been a major influence on the hobby, and his style has frequently been copied. He started in the hobby in a way that will be familiar to many hobbyists.
I started by seeing ads, Lionel trains on the TV, and then I coaxed my mother to get me the cheapest Lionel train set. And then at the same time I saw American Flyer ads with a 2-rail track, and I fell in love with American Flyer. It was a 4x8 on a sheet of plywood. It had a leg at each corner, and it sagged terribly in the middle. But I thought it was great, you know, and I built my own structures out of paper or whatever. Sometime in the 50s, I saw HO for the first time. I never even knew HO existed. And I absolutely fell in love with HO scale, and that's been with me since. I started following articles in RMC, in the Model Railroader. Some of my favorite authors were Lloyd Geidner, Paul Larson, I loved his work, Jack Work. Frank Ellison was another one that got me hooked into learning all about that operation stuff, even though I don't do much of it on this layup, and naturally John Allen. I mean, you see those mountains and everything, and still, you look at pictures today and it's still incredible.
In short order, the need to do something more with the hobby took hold. And when it did, George turned to the golden age of steam to find inspiration.
I just started getting the urge for a layout. The years are going by, he says, you better start, you know, doing something if you're going to build a layout. And I love the old stuff. I mean, the 30s and early 40s. I just love that era with all the signs and the colorful automobiles and everything else, you know. My original plan was to copy John Allen, the mountain scenery to the floor, which I did some of it. But after doing a lot of urban scenes, I just fell in love with that type of modeling. And I said, this is more fun than just running through the mountains all the time. And plus, it would be good for operation, you know, switching and all that. Every industry here has a siding going up to it just for that purpose. The entire layout was built for operation. So we'll get to it sometime. It kind of evolved. I didn't expect it to be this big or this detailed. Did a small part and it just kept growing and growing, and I just kept enjoying it more and more. It just evolved into what it is now.
George's layout is a stunning combination of size and detail. Whether it's the impressive urban areas or the towering mountain ranges, this HO scale world dwarfs the trains of the Franklin and South Manchester that run through it. And yet, despite filling a 25-foot by 42-foot space and boasting a 300-foot mainline run, the layout is richly detailed. Many have likened it to a contest-winning diorama, but on a massive scale. George loves to build structures, and the layout includes many built from the kits that he's offered over the years through his business, Fine Scale Miniatures. That company, one of the most important names in the history of the development of craftsman structure kits, has been in operation since 1965 and still releases one kit per year. George confesses that the business came into being almost by accident.
I was working at a company called Ace Carbon Paper Company in Boston, on Summer Street in Boston, and I was scratch building HO structures by then. And it was a water tank and tool shed from one of the articles in Model Railroader. I brought that in to the office and I showed them. And 2 or 3 guys said, could you build me one of those? Yeah, I want one of those, could you build me one? So that night, just those sayings from them, I says, I'm going to start a kit business. For 3 years, I didn't make a penny. I was so frustrated. In fact, my sister told me to just get a job and do something else. But in 1970, when I came out with my Jacobs Fuel Company, which was the first of my limited run kits, and I remember Walthers in Milwaukee, they said to me, you'll never sell a kit $24.95. That was the price of the kit then. So I made 1,200 of those at the time, and they sold pretty quick. And that was the beginning when I started making some money.
One of George's favorite kits is the Hazen Boyd Flour Mill. Fine Scale Miniatures released 600 of these in 2014.
Let me show you what's inside. First of all, you get these hopefully great instruction sheets that show you step by step how to put it together. You got full color, whole sheet of full color photos. I can show you that. Let's see. Several photos to guide the model along with painting and weathering. You got full color signs here. I used to have a lot of buildings, somebody made fun of them. They said they look like something in Walt Disney Studios. But that's what people seem to like. You know, I mean, you come out with these plain prototypes and nobody would buy them. So, I mean, I was selling more kits, and I was selling 3,000 of each kit at one time. I used to use metal windows, by the way, and I found that these are much more to scale and they don't bend. Whenever I used to pack windows in these boxes, the castings, the mullions would bend easily, and it's pretty hard to straighten them out. And again, these are more to scale, and I like using these instead. Right now I'm making a little over 600 kits, and now I'm going to cut down to 300. Believe it or not, I want to start enjoying my layout. It's still a lot of work producing these, because you've got to do the same things. A lot of the guys, they say, you know, kits are so expensive, but they don't know what goes, the amount of money you have to dish out to put these together. I mean, the detail in each one now, back then they were simple. You just got looked like a box with windows, and you know, it was very basically simple. There were some good ones, but nothing like they are now. It's not just my kits, but there's a lot of others that are putting out contest quality stuff. just like everything else in the hobby. You know, locomotives, rolling stock. Never dreamed it would be like this. Probably the hardest part is when you have all this wood, you have to cut to fit. You can see it's all pretty clean wood, very little if any fuzz. And then you got all the template cards, how to put it together step by step. I don't do my own laser work. I have it done. It's done in California and shipped here. In the 80s, we had to join the parts together to make up a wall. Now that whole wall is in one piece with all the openings cut out. And they're all in separate bags, so it's easy to identify each part of the building. This is for the elevator, that's for the main building. This is the foundation. Even the notches have been cut out for the doors, which I do that myself here. And a lot of the wood has been pre-cut to size. This whole shop, at one time, I mean the layout's here now, but it was all tables. And I used to lay out about 1,200 or so kits. At one time I used to cut my own wood. I have all my woodworking machinery in the back room here, but that was just too much for me. And then you got all these castings here, which really make the model stand out. You got the bag, and then you got the small parts. You can see there's no flash on them. They're all very clean, very little cleanup necessary. I got hooked on casting. I used to travel about 30, 40 miles to some fellow outside of Boston here, and he taught me how to do casting. And he told me how to make the masters and everything and everything else about it. And I just got hooked on that, and I started giving a lot of details. A lot of guys would buy the kit just for the castings and use them in other places on their layout. My sawmill, which was, I sold 3,200, and it had over 200 castings in it. So you multiply that, that's over 500,000 castings. And then one day, Art Curran from Model Railroader spoke up and says, "George, you're overdoing it." You know, and he says, you can't have to put so much detail on the roofs and on the, you know, loading platforms. And I was really upset over that, and I was going to write him a nasty letter. But it was the best advice I ever got. I mean, nothing like a natural scene, even though I still have a lot of detail on here, but a lot of it's come off. You know, you can't have clutter in every part of the layout. It's ridiculous, because you don't have it in real life. You have a few buildings here that got clutter and, you know, like that. I keep saying I'm running out of room, but I find room somehow. You know, maybe, I hope that's an encouragement to some models out there too. I'll just stare at a spot, measure the model, the kit I want to put in place, and just, that can be worked in there. If you look long enough, you'll find a spot, you know. And don't be afraid to take stuff out, you know, because I take out some of the old stuff I didn't like and make changes. That's what's fun about the hobby. When you're this far and it's all, the layout's basically finished, the enjoyment now comes in just making these little touches. You know, like now I'm in the process of fixing all my turnouts. I got those old Shinohara turnouts they used to short out. So I'm in the process of fixing all those so it'll be DCC friendly. That's a big job, you know, but little by little I'm getting that done now too. I want to build a large yard because I'm accumulating so much rolling stock. It's getting hard, you know, to find a place to put it.
"30 years on, there are still many projects for George to tackle on the layout. And since he has built almost all of the Franklin and South Manchester single-handedly, it's a good thing he's a fast worker."
I can put something together probably in 2 or 3 days. You know, when I put one of my kits in, you know, you have to make it look like it was always there. And sometimes I can't use the actual plywood base that the diorama is on. I have to, you know, pry them up. I just squirt alcohol around the whole thing and pry it up slowly, then work it in place. But usually about 2 or 3 days, I can get it all finished and everything. Sometimes I wish I wasn't that quick, because then there's nothing to do for a while. I do a lot by myself, because it's hard to get people in the daytime. And I live 6 miles away from here, and I don't want to come here at night like most guys do at their home, you know. They're downstairs in the basement or something. I got a bunch of guys now that can probably help me after an open house.
Anybody who's built a layout knows that even the smallest model railway needs regular maintenance to keep it in top shape. A layout is also a terrific magnet for dust, which can obscure the builder's hard work under a layer of unflattering gray dullness. George has come up with a clever solution to quickly protect all that detail he's added to the Franklin and South Manchester.
This is how I keep my layout clean. I use these black drop cloths that I just hook up like this. Like that. Like that. And then it takes about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to cover the whole layout, something this big. And I'm just surprised that more model railroads don't use this technique to keep their layout clean. The reason I'm doing one rail at a time here is because I have my guardrails on here and they're painted. And if I do both rails at a time, the paint will come off the guardrail, and I don't want that.
Keeping on top of maintenance means the layout is ready to put on a good show for visitors. And reliable running means the Franklin and South Manchester is fun to operate too. As the layout matured, George and some friends worked up an operating scheme, and the inaugural operating session was held in November 2009. To make operations more realistic, George plans to install a working signaling system, and his fondness for signal towers means the railroad is ready for that. They're everywhere and give the Franklin and South Manchester a real railroady feel. But then again, there's a lot of everything everywhere, and some people suggest George has overdone it sometimes, but he has a good answer for that.
Some guys sometimes come here and say, boy, you've got an awful lot of buildings here. I said, did you ever look at old pictures of Boston or something? The buildings are sort of like a Frankenstein type. You grab a little here, grab a little there, detail on a roof here, detail here from a building, and you put it all together and you come up with some interesting model.
The models are even more interesting because of George's generous use of signs. These give visitors a sense of place and help define the layout's era. Today, home computers, illustration software, and color laser printers make it relatively easy to create signs, but many of the signs on George's layout predate the PC and often required a lot of legwork to find.
The colorful signs on the buildings are all paper. I mean, that's like the Coca-Cola signs and all that. And I would just go to bookstores and try to find old magazines, antiques advertising. There weren't many around then. Now there's all kinds available. And I'd pay like $40, $50 for the book and cut out 2 or 3 signs and throw the book away. And I would just cut the sign out, sand the back without tearing it. You go in one direction and glue it on. If it was a brick wall, I'd glue it with full strength Elmer's white glue and then let it set till you get in the right spot and then just go along. I'd call up my wife and go along each brick with my fingernail while I was talking to her. That'd take about 15, 20 minutes. And the writing on the walls, that's done with dry transfers. That was all that was available then. And then when the computer started coming out, my daughter started making me all kinds of signs.
Viewers who take the time to take in the details may notice a divinely inspired theme. George has integrated his faith into many aspects of his work.
I am a Christian, and I do it all to His glory. He gave me the talent. That's why I think I've been so successful at it. I mean, with His guidance and everything, and that's what it's all about. That's what life is all about.
His faith has taught George to use the gifts he's been given. Tools and supplies are raw ingredients to be shaped by his talent, and he believes there's no time like the present to turn the products of his imagination into a spectacular layout.
Life is a vapor. It's just flying by. It seems like I just started this business and 50 years went by. And how much time more I got, I don't know.
And that raises the question, what's to become of the Franklin and South Manchester? Will it outlive its creator?
I've been thinking of that a lot, but I really don't know what's going to happen to it. I really don't. It'll probably end up in a dumpster. I don't know. I'd like to have it end up in a museum someplace, you know, but I really don't know what's going to happen. It'll probably be broken up in parts and people will take parts of it. I don't know. But I'm going to enjoy it as long as I can. And I don't want to even think of that right now. It's my own little world. I get lost in here, you know. I mean, the world is going crazy as it is. And you come here and it's just so relaxing, especially if I got a small project, you know, to do or something on, or just to run the trains.
The cities and towns on the Franklin and South Manchester are the products of George's imagination, but they just feel right. To visitors, the layout feels like a place they've never been, yet somehow they find it very familiar.
They've said, you know, it feels like I've been in this part of someplace in real life, you know. It's something that you wish existed. But I don't know how to say how I arrived. I look at it sometimes myself, and I say, how did I ever put this together, and how did I arrive at that design? But at the time, it just came to me, and I ended up with this. And I didn't expect it to ever be this famous, you know, but like I said, people have come from all over the world to see it.
The layout has drawn model railway enthusiasts from far and wide, including a few celebrities. One of those is singer Rod Stewart, a big fan of the layout, whose own model railway, the Three Rivers Railroad, features similar urban scenery. Rod visited George in 2013.
He was great. I mean, the guy he's unbelievable. He just loves the hobby. When he comes in here, he puts his arm around me. I have to walk around the whole layout with his arm around me. He was really a great guy.
But famous crooners aren't the only visitors to the Franklin and South Manchester. Anybody can see it in person, as George invites the public to his regular open houses.
I do 6 a year, plus the one before the Springfield Mass Show, which is in January, end of January. But from April to October, one Saturday a month from 9 to 12. Photography is now allowed. I charge $5 so I can take my wife out to supper that night. Yeah, well, that was her idea. She likes lobster.
On this day, visitors have come from all over, including a special club-organized tour. The guests are overcome by the attention to detail.
My first impression was it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, because I've never seen a picture of the whole layout in the room. You know, it's always been close-ups.
In other words, we're trying to take a...
George's friend Tom Driggers helps out at open houses.
George has done it the opposite because the switches never were designed. It was just trackers.
He points out details to visitors that they might otherwise miss. Tom's contributions have been important to make sure the Franklin and South Manchester really shines when guests arrive.
George and I have been trying to work together to basically share the layout with everybody else. I mean, we've done wiring, worked on the track work together. You know, I handle all of his engines, brass and plastic, all electronics, switch machines, decoders, sound. Really, it's mostly to just try to let it come alive, to share it with people.
It's just so inspirational. I mean, the detail, just the scene, how he takes a model and turns it into something that's art and really beautiful to look at.
We look at things and we say, well, this model is, it's very extravagant, or it's very complicated, or you know, very intricate. But the real thing is, George doesn't see it like that. It's all a piece and a part. So he thinks differently than most of us. And I've seen him in one afternoon take an old casting and turn it into a completely new building using just parts and pieces, because he doesn't think of it as, well, how do I put it together and how do I make it work? He just goes and does it, and voila.
When people plan to visit the Franklin and South Manchester, they anticipate seeing a legendary layout filled to overflowing with contest-quality model building. What they take away from a layout visit, however, is something different.
George, he's as you would see on the outside, he's very shy and very humble. But what you don't know is actually he has a pretty good sense of humor. You know, coming down and visiting George is really the meat and potatoes of coming to the Franklin and South Manchester. You're coming here to see the layout, but you walk away with the essence of George.
Building the Franklin and South Manchester has been a 30-year project, and even though there's still more to do, George looks forward to working on his layout. For him, the real joy of his hobby is in the opportunity to create something wonderful. An act of creation that's all the more powerful when one picks up tools and materials to craft one's own vision.
I wish there were more guys building out there. You know, there's so few now. I mean, it's just such an enjoyable part of the hobby. Not because of my kids, even scratch building. I mean, everybody just wants to snap everything together and run trains, you know. I get a lot of beginners on, you know, they call me and I tell them, start with a simple kit, like, you know, a Campbell kit or something. You know, work on that or something until you get the knack. But it's so enjoyable. I don't understand why there's not more modelers building. I mean, it gets in your blood and it stays with you all your life. When you get burnt out, my wife and I head off of the mountains up in New Hampshire. We go there, relax, and I come back, I'm on fire again.